Hello, my name is Brendan Byrne. I'm an agri-business consultant in Wexford, in the southeast of Ireland. I'm founder of SFP, Soil Food People, an initiative to enhance community health from the ground up. My people go back away in farming, butchery and business, and I myself have a very keen interest in agri-food and its importance in human health. More recently, I set up a podcast, and you can see in the background, called Salt of the Earth, where I set out to interview people making a difference in farm food and in health. And I'm delighted to say I have a number of those people that I interviewed speaking here at the meeting. There's no doubt about it that we are in ever-changing and challenging times, but it's all the more important to keep an eye on other areas that are important to human health. A recent report from the United Nations tells us that 1/3 of the soil across the globe is becoming degraded. And that's important because soil health is fundamental to nutrition. And nutrition is fundamental, as we know, to human health. Another report from the United States Department of Agriculture shows that over a 50-year period, there has been a significant decline in the nutritional quality of fruit and vegetables. Closer to home, the Irish Medical Organisation tells us that we are facing an epidemic of chronic disease in the coming years. So what can we do about these issues? Well, that's the reason I put this initiative together, to bring a group of experts and influencers, farmers and contributors, to shine a light on the path from soil health to food health to human health and happiness. Ní neart go cur le chéile. In Irish, that means there's no strength without unity, but there's also no strength without community. And by that I mean farmers continuing to support community by producing healthy food from the goldmine of nutrition that's stored in their soil. And in turn, that community would continue to support farmers and keep them in business for the long term. So the overview of today's meeting is that we have 5 speakers, as I've said. We follow that with individual contributions from farmers and individuals. And then at the very end, we'll have a 15 or 20-minute Q&A session. So I'll shortly introduce our first speaker of this evening. I'm now going to hand you over to Ivor Cummins. Ivor is going to shine a light and provide some facts and information on the tsunami of chronic disease that we now face. Over to you now, Ivor.
Thanks, Brendan, and it's great to be here, guys. So I'm going to bring you through some heart disease realities and explain what's behind a lot of the modern chronic disease that we see over the past century. So we have a phrase in engineering, and I'm a problem solver, biochemical engineer for many decades. If you don't measure it, you can't understand it. And this is very important because we're not measuring things properly in today's world and really getting to the root of what the problems are. Another phrase we had is, if you don't measure it, it don't get fixed. And that's very, very relevant to today's modern chronic disease world, where we have so much suffering, but it's not very clear what's driving it because we're not measuring the right things. So I'm going to give an example. David Bobbitt sponsors myself from the Irish Heart Disease Awareness Association, ihda.ie, and it's for me to get the message out and some of what I'm going to tell you today. So I'm going to tell you David Bobbitt's story. Basically, he's the CEO and owner of H&K International, a very large Irish corporation. 52 years old, 8 years ago, super fit, running 4 times a week, non-smoker, slim, apparently very fit. Doctors described him as bulletproof. So he was careful with his health and he got a lot of executive medicals. All the blood tests were pretty much good, treadmill tests, ECGs, all the stuff. Fit as 10% for his age, bulletproof. But then he happened to get a scan in the USA, and it's a calcium scan, a quick CT scan which sees the calcium in your heart's arteries and tells you whether you really have a problem or not. And he found out he had a huge score. He was the worst 1% for his age, 75% chance possibly of a heart attack or death in the next 10 years. So it was a real shock because the calcium scan, the CAC score you get, it supersedes all tests, all blood tests, blows them away, tells you what's really going on inside. So David didn't take this lying down. He did research over the next few months. He got angiograms, showed multiple blocked vessels, But he didn't need surgery. Lifestyle and some medications were the fix, because the root causes are mostly to do with nutrition and lifestyle, and some meds can help as well. He found out that he was actually type 2 diabetic by testing his own blood glucose after a meal. The previous tests had never shown it. So type 2 diabetes, undiagnosed, a massive driver of heart disease, the biggest driver. And again, nutrition is the root cause. Nutrition is what leads you down the path to this. So he, in the next 7-8 years, put a lot of money, of his own money, several $1 million, into funding the IHDA.ie charity, Irish Heart Disease Awareness. Also funded a $2 million movie about the calcium scan to get the message out. And that's available. We'll give you a link afterwards for free viewing. But he resolved his disease process, and this is the key. He took the right steps to stop his progression. And now, in the last 7 or 8 years, his slow progression indicates he has as low a risk as someone who never had a high score in the first place. So huge hope here. Anyone can do this. But undiagnosed diabetes we're going to come back to again and again. That's the elephant in the disease room. So we have a new movie out, I'll just tell you briefly, at extratimemovie.com. You can see on the bottom of the screen. And we've scanned 45 sports stars from the 91 Meath versus Down mega match. And Paddy O'Rourke there is our hero, and we follow his journey from a massive high score and huge risk through to addressing and resolving it. So you can really enjoy this in this time of lockdown. The primary factors for heart disease, I won't show you too many studies, but I'll just give you an idea. Here we see a Colombian study, tracked people for 7 years, middle-aged men, after they had a heart attack, to see would they have another and what predicted it. What they saw was the measurements of cholesterol or bad cholesterol or total cholesterol at the start of the study, they didn't predict a second heart attack at all. At all. Because they're very weak risk factors. Hypertension, if you had high blood pressure or higher blood pressure, doubled your chance of having that second heart attack. And that makes sense because hypertension is a good indicator of risk for many reasons. But insulin, measuring blood insulin, that indicated if you were high that you had 7 times almost the risk of having that second heart attack. So blood insulin relates to undiagnosed type 2 diabetes. That's why it's such a powerful risk factor as seen in this and many other studies. Also, the high insulin and the undiagnosed type 2 diabetes drives most of the hypertension or high blood pressure in today's world. So, not surprising it's an okay risk factor too. Undiagnosed diabetes, elephant in the room. So I've got to stress this further. I'll show you the 2015 EuroAspire study. And this looked at basically all across Europe. It surveyed all the heart disease patients. And they were aged 18 to 80. So it covered all the ages of heart disease patients. And it was 24 European countries they sampled, a total of 7,000 people, right? So it's a great study. But when they looked closely and measured their blood glucose, they didn't measure insulin, but they measured the glucose, which is not too bad. They found out straight away, wow, a third of these people almost are type 2 diabetics already, right? It's on their record. That's kind of crazy. But when they measured the glucose carefully, they found out another quarter were full-blown type 2 diabetics, but they were undiagnosed. Again, with careful glucose measurements, they found out another quarter were high risk for type 2 diabetes, but they were type 2 diabetic, right? They just didn't quite meet the very high bar to be called full-blown. So we basically had 3/4 of them, more than 3/4, were type 2 diabetic of all the patients, all ages for heart disease. And that'll give you an idea how massive type 2 diabetes is in heart disease. The remainder, they never used blood insulin measurements, and you really need to use insulin to find the other guys. So maybe half of this remainder were really type 2 diabetic as well, but they didn't use insulin. If you don't measure it, you can't understand it. And until this team, one of the first, did what I just told you, no one had any idea how much diabetes was out there in heart disease. Undiagnosed type 2 diabetes. It's not everything, but but it's the elephant in the heart disease room. The TOFI epidemic. You may have heard of TOFI, or thin outside, fat inside people. Well, these people are apparently not overweight or obese, but they've got fat inside their organs, which indicates diabetic problems. But no one knows because they don't look overweight. They don't smoke. And here's a scan which shows it. And basically this guy here, a 6-footer, right? He looks great and his BMI is only 22 roughly. Fantastic. But if you do a scan, you see the fat in yellow there in his organs. So it's hidden disease. 40% of non-obese people are TOFI. So there's hundreds of millions of them out there. No one really knows their risk. But their heart attack risk is just as high as an obese guy with fat in his organs. But no one knows it. So when a guy in his 50s is apparently not fat and doesn't smoke, drops dead of a heart attack, right, leaves 3 children behind, everyone's wondering why, chances are he was a TOFI. If you don't measure it, can't understand it. Undiagnosed type 2 diabetes, that's what TOFIs are. So here's the root causes of heart disease, the big ones. I've listed them, you don't need to worry about them. But just to say that high insulin, hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance, something you might hear in the next few years, and high blood glucose and spikes in your blood glucose, particularly after a meal. That whole area, that's the undiagnosed type 2 diabetes. It's top of the list. But there are other drivers too, like oxidative stress and blood pressure I mentioned, mineral and vitamin deficiencies like magnesium, potassium. So there are lots of other drivers and autoimmune conditions. But the big ones are the ones I'm telling you about today. Undiagnosed type 2 diabetes being top of the heap. So you have a choice, and we're going to see these pyramids throughout the rest of the presentations. On the left is a choice of healthy soils, a great foundation for healthy animals and healthy plants, for good food sources, right? Wholesome food, leading to healthy people, low rates of heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancers, all that stuff. Or on the right, you can choose poor soils, right? Filled with fertilizers, right? They've lost their essence. Any junk food, highly processed food, most of what the supermarket is. And you can leave yourself open to what I described just now. Final point, this thing that's going on at the moment, it's causing suffering and death and huge impacts. But I wonder, has it got a lot to do with what I just described to you? Or is it something else altogether? Well, let's take a look at a New York specialist in viral diseases who's currently managing a lot of these coronavirus patients. Let's see what he has to say about what type of people are at most risk.
You've seen an interesting and I guess disturbing trend of underlying conditions for those COVID patients. What are those?
It's disturbing. We're seeing a lot more diabetes than we've ever seen with any respiratory viral infection. I just did the calculation. We have 23 proven COVID patients. 13 are known diabetics. The other 9 are pre-diabetic. So only 1 out of 23 hospitalized COVID patients that we're taking care of, proven ones, is not diabetic or pre-diabetic. In the severe form, we had 15 patients with severe COVID disease in the ICU on the vent. 10 of those patients had diabetes, 4 had pre-diabetes.
Wow.
The only one who didn't was a 94-year-old man. We don't know if he had either. The testing wasn't done, and we still don't even have his COVID test back, so we're not even sure he fits that category. So the frequency of diabetes and pre-diabetes and high sugar levels when they present is enormous and something I've never seen associated with any viral infection. Pre-diabetics are also at risk, especially if they have a high BMI. We haven't had anyone under 70 who didn't have a very high BMI or was pre or diabetic get seriously ill.
And there we have it. So diabetic dysfunction, physiology, is pretty much the biggest risk factor for having a serious outcome from this disease also. So you'll hear Tara talking in a short while about how you actually intervene to resolve this, because it's absolutely resolvable with the right interventions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ivor, for that interesting and stimulating but frightening talk. You did say, however, that healthy food can address a lot of these issues. Of course, healthy food comes from the soil, and healthy soil provides healthy food. I'd now like to hand over to David Atherton, who will tell us about healthy soil, how we can get it, and its other advantages that it provides. Over to you now, David.
Hello, I'm David Atherton, a dairy nutritionist and grassland agronomist specialising in soils. I run my own business, Thompson and Joseph, supplying nutrient and biological additives into the dairy and beef farming industry. I also run a laboratory service company which specialises in the nutrient analysis of soil, grass, slurry and drinking water. In Ireland, I work with Devonish to support their sustainability strategy for Irish farming by focusing on integrating the nutrition cycle, which links soil, grass, cattle, milk and beef with human health. The presentation is titled "The Answer Lies in the Soil," to emphasise the importance of soil in solving many of the challenges we are facing in today's world, including declining food quality, which is linked to poorer human health, deteriorating water quality and increased greenhouse gas emissions. Soils are the starting point for sustainable farming, which is all about producing nutritious, healthy food in a way that doesn't damage the environment. Human life is dependent on soils, which supply 95% of our food, but soils are under pressure like never before, from erosion, compaction and poor soil health. My first slide looks at some of the key functions of soils, including firstly, the filtering and purifying of water, which allows water to be recycled to ensure we have clean drinking water, which is, of course, a fundamental requirement for human health. Secondly, nutrient recycling. Soils are a gold mine of nutrition, and yet it is largely locked up in a form plants can't access, which makes farming more dependent on chemical fertilizer applications. That impacts both the environment and food quality. Thirdly, biodiversity. Soils are living entities, and we should nourish and cherish them and protect their health in the same way we do for other life forms, including us humans. Soils contain millions of different organisms, from microscopic bacteria and fungi through protozoa, mites, and eventually arriving at the mighty earthworm. All these life forms are dependent on each other to create a living, healthy soil. And yet we treat soils simply as lifeless dirt, to be abused and degraded, the consequences of which are soil erosion, deteriorating water quality, increasing greenhouse gas emissions, and poorer food quality, which ultimately impacts our health. Fourthly, carbon sequestration. Soils have a tremendous capacity for removing carbon from the atmosphere and locking it up through the photosynthetic action of plants. Soil represents the largest terrestrial carbon store, containing 3 times more carbon than all the vegetation on the planet, including trees, and twice as much carbon than is in the atmosphere. All these functions, which are critical for producing clean water and high quality food in an environmentally sustainable way, is dependent on a living, healthy soil. The only way to determine soil health on the farm is to dig a hole. My spade is the most used piece of equipment in my truck. It's not called a groundbreaking invention for nothing. Digging a hole 20 meters square and deep can reveal many of the characteristics of soil health, or lack of it, as listed in my second table. A healthy soil should contain 50% solid soil mineral particles and 50% air. It is the pores and fissures that make up the 50% space in which life flourishes and drainage occurs. A healthy soil will be well aerated, have little or no compaction, have a consistent brown colour and a rich earthy smell. It will also contain lots of worms, typically 20 to 25 in the hole I've just dug, and have a high natural fertility and be an active living soil. In contrast, an unhealthy soil will be compacted due to a collapse in the soil structure, which squeezes air out of the soil as the 50% space is reduced to zero in badly compacted soils. Rooting is shallow because the soil is hard, and oxygen, which roots depend on, only exists in the top 5 centimeters of soil. It will smell musty with a whiff of rotten eggs. Life forms in general, and our visible friend the earthworm in particular, are largely absent or in depleted numbers. An unhealthy soil will have poor fertility as the microbes are not present to access the nutrients stored in the soil. Describing an unhealthy soil as being dead is probably a bit of an exaggeration, as bad microbes that don't breathe air will displace the good air breathing ones. But from the point of view of a healthy functioning soil, it might just as well be dead. Research has shown an extremely unhealthy soil can reduce grass dry matter yields by up to 40% compared with a healthy living soil. Even a moderately unhealthy soil can reduce grass yields by 25%. The three essential inputs to sustain a healthy soil are air, water, and food. In practice, water and food in the form of soil organic matter are rarely limiting. It is compaction, squeezing air from the soils and suffocating soil life, that is the greatest threat to soil health. And the only way to check this out is to dig a hole, which brings me back to my trusty spade. Together with Devonish, I have been instrumental in developing a practical and farm-based soil improvement plan. Its purpose is to reduce compaction and improve soil health. And in so doing, increase grass yields and nutritive quality in a sustainable and economic way to the benefit of cattle health, productivity, and profitability. My third table illustrates this plan. When we think of soils, we can split soils into three distinct fractions: physical, chemical, and biological. The physical fraction is what we can pick up and examine, having dug our hole. The chemical fraction relates to the nutrient status of soils, and the third fraction, the biological fraction, is of course soil life in all its many forms. And the soil improvement plan has been developed to tackle each of these fractions in turn. The first step is looking at the actions needed to improve the physical fraction, and this involves the use of surface aerators and pan buster machines, which are designed to be used on a regular basis in spring and autumn when soil conditions are reasonably dry, to disrupt compaction in the top 15 centimeters of soil, which is where we tend to see most of the compaction, and also to improve surface drainage, reduce nutrient runoff, encourage rooting, and allow air penetration in support of soil life. For the second fraction of the soil, the chemical fraction, we adopt the Chagos nutrient management model, which is based on regular soil testing for pH to determine lime status, and available phosphorus and potassium levels to enable planning for fertilizer applications. But in addition to that, we measure the soil organic matter content, which is the food for soil life, and the calcium and magnesium balance, which is important for building a stable soil structure. The third step involves improving the biological status of the soil, in other words, life. The actions we take here are to compost farm-produced slurry and manures using microbial inoculants. We all recognise what a powerful soil conditioner and life provider well-rotted and composted farmyard manure is to improving soil health. But this is not the case for slurry, which, while being a valuable fertiliser resource, is in an anaerobic state, encourages the putrid and smelly bacteria that do not support soil health. Rather, they suppress it. By composting or aerobically digesting slurry using a microbial inoculant such as Digested, switches the microbial balance from anaerobic to the air-breathing aerobic bacteria, which reduces the distinctive smell of slurry, making slurry more uniform and converting nutrients into more available forms. It also supports the good soil bacteria that are an integral part of soil health. Taking this action to reduce compaction by improving all three fractions, physical, chemical, and biological, creates the conditions which allows life to flourish and for health to be restored. And we do this to benefit higher grass dry matter yields and nutritive quality, as well as lowering chemical fertilizer applications, as nutrient utilization from soil and slurry is improved. We also get better environmental outcomes with a reduced risk of surface runoff and water pollution, and also lower levels of nitrous oxide, that potent greenhouse gas, which is 300 times more climate warming than carbon dioxide. But it also represents the first step in linking soil health to human health. Remember, Healthy food comes from healthy soil. Go with the green choice. You know it makes sense.
Thank you very much, David, for that very insightful presentation on healthy soil. Of course, when you have healthy soil, you can produce wholesome, healthy food, which can be of great assistance in the management of type 2 diabetes. It's a terrible disease, and to hear more about its effect and how it can be controlled, I'd now like to hand you over to Tara Kelly, who has a very insightful presentation and insight into the whole issue around this disease and other related issues. Over to you now, Tara.
Hi there, my name is Tara Kelly. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm from Galway, but I'm working over in London in the UK. So I work in research, and I'm also the lead dietitian for an organisation in the UK called Diabetes Digital Media. And as you can see there, we have an application called Grow Health, and that really is an app that helps people at home or using their phones or their computers to improve their metabolic health. So my background is really in metabolic health. It's what I study, it's what I'm interested in. And when I say metabolic health, I really mean things like type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, actually overweight and obesity. They would be classed as metabolic diseases. So I think in Ireland about 65 or 64% of people now are classed as overweight or obese. So we're really thinking about a population here of people who are really not that metabolically well. And what I'm really excited about actually is that, with the other speakers you're hearing today, and with the amazing farming and the technologies we have here in Ireland, that we actually have a lot of the answers to some of these problems. And that is kind of eating real food. And that's what I'm really, I suppose, really passionate about. But why is there such a big problem, not just in Ireland, but around the world in terms of metabolic disease? Well, there's, lots of different factors. There's genetic factors and other things. But one of the main lifestyle factors that we actually have control over really is the nutrition and the food that we eat. And sometimes I think it gets a bit complex where people aren't really sure what's healthy and what's not. And I hope today I can really give you some ideas as to how simple it can be to really eat well. Obviously, things like physical activity are very important, for cardiovascular health, and thinking about things like stress and sleep. These are really important factors that we maybe don't consider too often when we're thinking about metabolic health. Now, something I've noticed and something that really upsets me is that, to date we place the healthcare system, are really quick to jump to drugs. So if you go to your doctor and you've got a problem with your blood sugars or with your blood pressure, the doctors tend to reach for the prescription pad. And what we really need to be thinking about is kind of more lifestyle medicine. So thinking about how our environments and the food we eat and our social situations and the work that we do, and how that can all actually have a huge impact on your health. And with the organisation that I work with, we see thousands of people really, really being able to either put their diabetes into remission or lose significant amounts of weight. And it's not just about the weight. The interesting thing is when people improve their metabolic health, things like their mood and their stress and everything else seems to, really improve. And what I see with a lot of my patients is that most people tend to have more than one metabolic issue. A lot of people will be carrying extra weight. They might have pre-diabetes, or they might have a strong family history of it. They might have high blood pressure. And actually all of these things can resolve quite quickly if we just look at the food that we're eating. Now, the advice that I always give at the end of the day is that we shouldn't be focusing on calories and low-fat foods and things like that. We should be really looking at the food, and especially the types of food that we make so well here in Ireland that are real foods. And it really isn't that complex, really, when you think about it. If we're thinking about foods that are healthy, we're thinking about foods that are as close to their natural form as possible. So what does that look like? Well, here's a list of some foods. This is what I would call the kind of green foods. And if you have a look there, it's all foods, again, as I mentioned, that are as close to their natural form as possible. We really shouldn't be eating foods out of packets all the time. Unfortunately now in Ireland and across the world, it's normal for us to be taking foods out of packets. Foods that are what we call ultra processed. They're very, very high in chemicals. They're made in factories. And this is not the food that we evolved to eat. If we're thinking about the foods we should be eating, we're thinking about your meat, your fish, your eggs, your leafy greens, your vegetables, full fat dairy, that we make so well here in Ireland. And really focusing on real food. And if it ever gets too complex, I always say to my patients, well, eat how your granny ate or how your great granny ate, because I can tell you that they didn't have low fat yogurts back then, or they didn't have calorie control or calorie counting. And I think we've made a huge mistake here by going down the calorie counting route, because we're actually not focusing on real foods and the foods that keep us full and the foods that keep our blood glucose levels stable. And that's really the key here. So these are the types of foods I'd be asking everyone, whether you have a metabolic disease or not. These are the really should be, I think, the staple foods in most people's diets. There are some foods that are then in the middle, and that would be kind of like your higher sugar fruit, things like cheeses and processed meats and alcohol. Those foods we could have occasionally, but I'd say they shouldn't really make up the bulk of your diet. Now, the foods that we need to be trying to avoid or kept to a real minimum. So this is where things get difficult, because everybody knows, we all know that your fizzy drinks, your biscuits, your cakes, your crisps, we know that they're not good for us. Yet they are full in the supermarkets, they're everywhere around us, and they're in everybody's home. So we really need to remember that these foods are so ultra processed, and they could cause havoc in our bodies when we're trying to metabolize them. They raise your blood glucose levels, they raise your insulin levels. They're really not healthy foods to be having. Now, the other place, and my patients will often say to me, well, I don't really eat much sugar. But a lot of people are surprised to hear that carbohydrates, or specifically refined carbohydrates, and by that I mean white flour, white rice, bread, white pasta, these types of foods that, again, we don't associate with sugar, actually chemically in your body, when you break them down, they actually break down into glucose or sugar. So these foods we actually need to be really careful of, and we really need to minimize them in our diet as well. And that's for everybody, and that's across the board. Again, it's going back to these foods. If you put a loaf of white bread in your press, it can stay there for days and days and days without going off, because it's got so much chemicals and so much additives in it. And it really is not how food was supposed to be eaten. So it really is about the sugars, the added sugars, the fizzy drinks, but also thinking about those refined carbohydrates as well. Now we'll do a little exercise. So this is something that we tend to do. So on the Grow Health app that I mentioned, we tend to do little exercises like this to really help people understand the consequence of the food they're eating. So this is breakfast A, and we're going to compare it to another breakfast in a minute. And this is some bran flakes with some skimmed milk. That's a slice of whole grain toast, and that's some freshly squeezed apple juice. Now, have a think to yourself, does this seem like a healthy breakfast to you? And let's compare this breakfast. So that's option A. Let's compare it to option B. So option B is a 3-egg omelette with the yolk and everything, with some cheese, with some veggies in there, and with a coffee with full fat milk. So a lot of people might look at this option B and say, oh, that's got quite a bit of fat, or, it's not as healthy as option A. But actually, when we look at the impact, remember how I mentioned that these refined foods and refined cereals break down into sugar. So the equivalent of the breakfast A would have about 16 teaspoons of sugar equivalent on your blood glucose. Now compare that to option B, and that would have less than 1 teaspoon of sugar on your blood glucose. And when I say your blood glucose, I really mean the amount of blood sugar in your body at any one time. So it's really not just a problem of people with type 2 diabetes. This is something that people who have metabolic disorder, anyone who's overweight or obese, they would really need to think about minimizing the impact on their blood glucose levels. So it's important to remember that if you are even having those foods as a treat occasionally, they should be a treat, and that's exactly what they should be. We shouldn't be having foods that have an impact the same as 16 teaspoons of sugar for our breakfast before we've even left the dinner table. We're really getting the day started off all wrong. So it's really, really important to think about the consequences of the food that you are eating, and keeping it really simple and focusing on the foods that we get that are as close to nature as possible. So going back to the app that I mentioned, so this is Grow Health, and it really does cover all of the things that I've tried to cover in the last few minutes. So it's thinking about real food, nourishing food. We really don't recommend, lots of highly processed foods. Thinking about activity, so within this app you can look at activity for all levels, because we might not all have access to a gym or access to somebody who can help us with that. It's also thinking about education around sleep and the importance of that, and stress, and also really importantly, as some of the other speakers have mentioned, it's really important to think about your mental well-being as well. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take those questions, so just send me an email. So now I hope that you will see what I've said about kind of diet and real food, how that really links in with what the other speakers have said here. So if we're thinking about the left here, I'm really talking about the real wholesome food side of things. And on the right, you can see the obesity, the type 2 diabetes, and the heart disease, all of these diseases which I unfortunately see so prevalently in my patient cohort. And I think that, we do have the answer, and we really need to focus on healthy soil, healthy animals, wholesome food, in order to give us healthy people. Now, next, we're just going to hear briefly from Liam. So Liam is a man who went on a low-carb program, a digital app that helped him to follow a real food, low-carb diet. And I'll let you hear a little bit more from Liam just now.
Hello, I'm Liam McGrath and I live in Arklow, County Wicklow. In 1981, I gave up the cigarettes, and after that my weight went up quite dramatically, from 11.5 stone to 14.5 stone over the years. And only 5'6", so it was fairly heavy on my joints. I had to get 2 new hips and a new knee, and the last knee was done in March of 2018. After that, I kind of resolved to try to save the final knee, so that I could keep on playing golf and things like that. So to do that, I had to research weight loss, because that was really the key to what happened previously. So I looked up the internet and found, after a good bit of research, that probably the best course of action for me was going to be to go low carb, real food. So I started off at December of 2018, and by the summer of 2019 I was down 2 stone. My blood pressure had improved tremendously, and I found I wasn't very hungry all day, even though I was only eating about 2 big meals a day and a few bits of things here and there along the way. So the benefits that I found having done that is, A, my health has improved. I'm not very hungry anymore, and my weight has gone down by 2 stones, and I'm holding on to that, and my knee is still with me. My blood pressure is very good now, when it wasn't, and I'm off some of the meds. Now, if I was to recommend anybody to go on this, I would say, yes, there are things that you are negative about having to give up, but you have no problem in eating real good food, and plenty of it, and with great variety. So I wish anybody who's going to try this to best of luck, and I hope you succeed like I think I did. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, Tara, and to Lee McGrath. Isn't it great to hear from someone who has become empowered to change their lifestyle and their diet, and to improve the quality of their life? Next, I'd like to introduce you to a man who lives, works, farms, and produces healthy food in a mindful way. It's over to you now, Pat Mulcahy.
Hi everyone, my name is Patrick Mulcahy, and I'm also known as the Mindful Farmer. The farm here is at foothills of the Galtee Mountains in Mitchelstown, County Cork. What I'm going to speak to you about this evening is about what we do on the farm, everything that goes on the farm, from the house to the farm, the soil, the animals that we farm and why we farm them, the beautiful produce, healthy produce that we produce that leads into the community, healthy people. And then a huge part of my work at the moment is mindfulness and being the mindful farmer, and trying to give people help every day from my daily lives, my daily blogs, and then jumping onto the green platform and how positive all this is for people and how important it is to be positive. So going back to the house, house dates back to 1727, built by the 3rd Earl of Kingston for his land agent Sir Arthur Young. We purchased in 1995 as semi-ruin, and there was 16 acres with the farm at the time. We now farm approximately 220 acres organically. It's very important for us to do what we do. We very specifically set out to farm these type of animals because deer and wild boar were the first two animals that Irish people had ever to eat. And my dream was to reintroduce these back into Ireland and to start farming them organically, which we now do very successfully. And they're reared and they feed on beautiful soil, which produces beautiful grass, produces healthy meat, and this is what we're all about, isn't it? The soil itself is very important. It has to be nourished and managed just like it was in the old days when I lived back in West Limerick as a child, watching my parents and the whole community farming the soil organically, organic manure being hand forked out every day, producing beautiful grass, beautiful hay, and everybody in the community working together. There was no need for psychologists or hardly any doctors in those days because people were eating such wonderfully healthy food, and there is such. I don't remember anybody, I think, under 80 years of age having a health problem. Now you take back to the day and what's going on in society with obesity, diabetes, and all that. But everybody in the community in those days looked after everybody else. There was 22 of us in the parish, and every time we went farming, hey, no matter what we were doing, there was always a crowd in the field playing games on a Sunday. This was all community. And if there was somebody not well or wasn't feeling well, some elders in the community, be it male or female, would take him to one side and give him a bit of advice. This was the psychology. And people would consider me nowadays maybe as old-fashioned, but maybe old-fashioned might be the new fashion, and it might be the sensible fashion. So I think it's very important that we draw from our childhood memories. And it's important, I think, also to instill upon people to be who they are and to know who they are. And when you move along in life, then this will stand you in great stead. As I said earlier, the animals that we farm are very differently, and people thought this very different in the old days when we were doing it. But as I said, deer and wild boar were the only animals we'd eat thousands of years ago in Ireland, and my passion and dream was to reintroduce them. And delighted that we could do that, and we were able to do that. We went all over the world sourcing stock, New Zealand, Eastern Europe, all over, until we got the genetics that we wanted, and we're still working on all that. And that leads on to wonderful food, wonderful award-winning food, from breakfast to fine dining to lunch menus. We have our own EU licensed butchery here on the farm, and butchering is part of what I love to do on a daily basis as well, because I find it very relaxing. It's therapeutic once you're not rushed, and you know the animal from birth until while you're processing it and cutting it up. And you know that it's going to benefit somebody. There's just not any old cut of meat, that this is a steak or a casserole that's going to do some people good. And I think that's very, very important. This is very healthy food you know you're producing. And then that goes out into the community, be it within a short radius of where you live, or in our situation, we supply food all over Ireland, hotels, restaurants, and now neighbourhood food, which is brilliant. And we also sell it online. But how things have changed in the last 3 or 4 weeks, you could also say that the person that lived a month ago is totally different to the person that's living now. Our business has been turned inside out. Like, we had a bed and breakfast, which we don't have anymore because it's closed down. Our food business is practically non-existent. We don't know what's happening with the rest of our activities on the farm. So this is a very stressful time for lots of people, and COVID-19 is causing havoc all over the world, and it's very important that we look after the local people around us and our community, and we build up a mental strength which is vital for seeing us through our responsibilities in this area. And this is something, I suppose, where the mindfulness comes in very, very much to the forefront. And in the morning time, sometimes at dawn, I like to go out and share my thoughts for the day with people, what's in my mind and how I might be able to help somebody who's listening in. And we get a great response, be it in emails or even cards or letters. I would be a deep thinker, I suppose, in general, and when I'm out early in the mornings, thoughts might come into my head, or people might come into my head that I might pray for, or I might send messages of healing and that towards them. And I draw on that wonderful magnetic power from the earth, and I transmit that into my own body and then onto people who I feel would need it, or people who would call me and say they're not feeling well. It's very, very important now, and it always was. Mental health is very, very important, and I always like then in the morning time to give people a description of what's going on the farm in the morning of the previous day, and also then a thought that might come into my mind about, I think this morning I was talking about planning and how, since this now it seems that the planning that we were doing for the year is now, we have no idea. But the basic message that I was giving to people today is very important to be who you are. And it's also important that you will be who you were again. And what has been done will be done again. And there will be, tomorrow morning, there will be another sunrise. And it's important that people stick together now and have that mental strength and positive point of view, talk to people. And as I say, when I'm finishing my message every day, pray for each other, because the power of prayer will see us through all this. I don't think there's any other, they may talk about vaccines and that, but the power of prayer will see us through this. And I always say to people when I'm finishing, it's very, very important to pray for each other, to bless each other, and to send healing to each other, and keep that smile going, and to remember what's on that green platform, that eat healthy food, get out in the fresh air by being responsible in keeping your social distance, wash your hands and stay away 2 meters from each other, but eat healthy food from a healthy source, and it will build a strong nation again and a strong people. You'll have a lot less stress than you would if you were eating unhealthy food or leading an unhealthy life. Think about the land, think about the soil, think about the grass, think about the food and where it is coming from, and thinking about the great people that we were and that we are and that we're going to be again. Thank you very much for listening to me. The Mindful Farmer signing off now, and if you have any questions, I'll be very, very happy to take them. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pat, for sharing your story. It's certainly a prime example of what SFP, Soil Food People, is all about, by linking the health of soil to the heart of community. And you certainly tick a lot of those boxes. I enjoyed hearing about your life story, about how you made the choices you made, how to farm and live in the way that you do. And it very much ties in with our next speaker, Declan Coyle, who is going to tell us how we can transform our lives and our thinking by the choices that we make. I'd like to hand over to you now, Declan.
Good evening, Declan Coyle here, and this is the Green Platform, simply life-changing, the power to transform. Sometimes the thing that is holding you back is all in your head. It's all of those limiting beliefs that we've been conditioned to believe over the years. And when we look at generally the possibility that's untapped, most teams and individuals achieve a peak at 20% of their potential. There's usually 80% there. This is an egg. If an egg is broken from the outside, life ends. But if an egg is broken from the inside, life begins. All real and lasting change starts on the inside and works its way out. So your personality, how you think, how you act, and how you feel will create your personal reality. And everything we do to feel good. If you're buying a new car, or you want to get a new piece of land, or you want to get a new bullock, or a cow, you do it because of the feeling it will give you. And a lot of us live our lives in the other virus we have is the when then virus. When I get this, then I'll be happy. When this is all over and we get back to normal, then I'll be happy. But the art in life is to be happy now, to feel good now. So we have the green and the red platforms. The red platform is negative, where the familiar past becomes the predictable future. And the green platform is positive, where we imagine and create the future, a dream, a blueprint with a plan. Originally, I took the colors from lights, red for stop and green for go. So between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, I have the power to choose. And in that lies my growth and my happiness and my freedom. To react or to choose, it is there every moment of our lives. So in life, we have an event. It is as it is. I cannot unis it. It is what's unfolding in front of me now. And the whole art of living is to respond with loving service to the life that is unfolding in front of me now. Not something else that should be or could be or would be, but what is happening now. Because 99.999% of the world and the universe is running perfectly. The sun is still 25 million miles away. The nearest star is 4.5 light years away. And gravity is working. All of your body is working. There's a whole lot of things working. So it is as it is. You feel it, you honor it, you're emotionally honest. You don't pour pink positive paint over human suffering. You're real, you're genuine. Then we have a choice. I can choose the red platform, and the red platform is the victim, the complaint, the blame, the whinge, the whine, the moan, the poor me. And the green platform, I can also choose. I have the power to choose, and this has the 10 most powerful words in the English language. No word more than 2 letters. If it is to be, it is up to me. Underneath the red platform is a septic tank of sabotage called fear, false evidence appearing real. And it's full of self-doubt, panic, procrastination, helplessness, and above all, average. But on the green platform, I chose peace. I choose to be totally responsible. I choose to be positive, innovative, creative, to live with integrity, to live with passion, to build trust, to have fun, to be joyful. Underneath the green platform is the field of all possibility. Underneath the red platform is that septic tank of sabotage called fear. On the green platform, I'm a go-giver, not just a go-getter. I choose actions that bring joy to others, and I go with the flow of life. I am one with life. I have an intention, and I put conviction on that, and I manifest it in reality. And each one of us have a unique talent to be used in the service of others to build a better world. There I'm conscientious, and 10% of life is what happens to you. 90% is how we choose to respond to it. And that's my real power and my treasure lies. So practically, that anyone ever says something mean to you and you react and say something mean back, has it ever helped the situation or the relationship? But if you can take your time, become present, observe, activate your inner observer, your witnessing consciousness, they become the noticer, the alert watcher, and you don't bite that hook, but you choose kindness, choose understanding, choose compassion. It'll make all the difference. On the red platform, I'm defined by memories of the past and the external environment, but on the green platform, I'm defined by a green platform vision and map of the future. On the red platform, I'm a passive observer. Life happens to me. The outside influences my inside. But on the green platform, I'm a proactive creator. I happen to life. The inside influences the outside. On the red platform, I'm the victim. I resist, complain, blame, spread negativity, self and team sabotage. But on the green platform, I'm responsible. I create breakthroughs. I inspire others to act. I have a positive story on the facts and I explore possibilities. On the red platform, the pronoun is you. I blame them. On the green platform, the pronoun is I. I am responsible. I have the ability to choose my response responsibility. The ABCs of the red platform are anger, blame, complain. The ABCs of the green platform are awareness and belief and breaking limiting beliefs and commitment to do what I'll say I'll do long after the mood in which I've said it is over. And that's the movement we go through, become aware, half step on the red platform. No, I can choose the green platform, not the red. I can choose a better response. I can choose peace. I can choose joy. I can choose inner harmony rather than this. And when you meet somebody, do you give energy or do you sap their energy? Are you an energy transformer, a radiator? Or are you an energy vampire, a complainer, a drainer? You know these energy vampires, it's not their bad breath or their body odor, but my God, they drain you. They're whinging, they're whining, they're moaning, they're complaining, and they suck the energy from you like your vacuum cleaner. So every day we make that choice to live in misery on the red platform or with inner joy on the green platform. Your true superpower is where you choose to place your attention. Where energy flows, where attention goes, and where attention goes, your energy flows. So my question is always why? Why, when something happens, do you make up a story on the red platform like this is a disaster that makes you feel bad, when you make up a story on the green platform like this is a great opportunity that makes you feel good? Questions. On the red platform, I ask poison questions, and it's 100% certain I'll get poison answers. Poison questions are, why can't you? When will you? Why won't they? Who dropped the ball? Why me? Why you? You'll 100% certainly get a poison answer because you're a slob, because you lacked early life love, because your mother loved your sister more than you, but I didn't have a sister. But if you had, she would have. Or I can ask power questions. How can I? How can I be the best version of myself today so that those around me can flourish and shine and be the best that they can be? How can I get into the 20% of my activities that will give me 80% of my results? How can I fuel every moment with the best that's in me now? And during this pandemic, if we just focus on the virus and the news, we will actually activate cortisol and decrease our immune system. But we can boost our immune system with gratitude. 4 days of gratitude, 10 minutes a day, will boost your immune system by over 50%. Positive thinking and feeling, make that choice consistently, pivot, change. What's the positive? There isn't enough evidence in the whole world to say that pessimism works. Exercise and nutritious food, meditation, and again, acts of kindness. So that's the green platform. That's what will boost your immune system. And we can take it from here. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Declan. You've certainly given us plenty of food for thought. And speaking about food, I'd now like to introduce two Wexford farmers, Eamon Crane and Liam Byrne, who would like to share their story. Over to you guys.
Hello, my name is Liam Byrne. I am from County Wexford in Ireland. I am a buffalo farmer and we have a herd of about 80 water buffalo. We've been farming buffalo since 2016. We wanted to create a product, a meat product, that we could sell directly to the customer, no middleman. So we decided we would look into water buffalo, and we discovered they're a great animal to farm. They require no doses or injections or pour-ons. They're a fine, healthy, robust animal. They suit, the land around here is called the Macklemores down around Wexford, and they suit the land down here. It's good grass growing land. It grows very well in the summer, and these animals, the water buffalo, really thrive much better in the summer on the grass rather than on feedstuffs in the winter. So basically their diet is mainly silage and then grass in the summer. As I said, they require no veterinary or doses or injections or anything like that. I haven't seen a vet since our last herd test, so that's nearly 11 months ago now. Last August, it really came home to me the importance of healthy food being sold to the consumer. I was diagnosed as a type 2 diabetic. When I'm not farming. My other job is a musician, and of course late nights and lots of takeaways and that kind of thing. So when I told I was type 2 diabetic, I decided straight away it was either go on medication or change my diet, and it had to be done straight away. So that was in August, and really and truly by December, November, I had lost 2 stone. I wasn't exercising, just cutting out the processed food, eating what I tried to call one ingredient foods. So your fruit, you have fruit. In your veg, you have veg. In your meat, you have meat. And just cutting out all the processed foods. And my diabetes turned around in literally 3 months. And so there is a huge connection for us here at Macklemore Buffalo between growing healthy animals, feeding them healthy, nutritious grass, not being a highly intensive farmer. We just farm here what we can. We don't overstock, we don't overspread on bagged fertilizer. So that is what we try to do. As I say, we farm, we sell direct to our customer. We only keep what the land can maintain in a natural way. Don't overspread bag manure. We rely on slurry a lot. We grow very good grass for the most part of our farm. We rear healthy animals. We have a healthy meat from those animals that we sell all locally here, all in the Gorey, Wexford, Wicklow area. And that is our story here at Macklemore Buffalo in County Wexford. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eamon Crane. Welcome to Green Hill Fruit Farm. We're here in Davistown in County Wexford. I'm part of the Crane family. We're growing fruit since 2003. We sowed our first lot of strawberries. We used a lot of farmyard manure and realised then that there was a lot of biodiversity within the soils that we sowed underneath the plastics. We grew fantastic plants within these soils and grew fantastic flavoured berries with good yields. It was very educational to see what good soils could do with a lot of biodiversity within the soils. This is a crop of centenary that we're producing, and we're hoping to have this, picking this in 2 weeks' time. We've created a lot of employment locally, and stopped a lot of imports from coming in, which was a very good success story. And we hope to pick this crop and it'll be ready for the 2020 season.
Thank you very much, Eamon and Liam. Thank you very much for sharing that with us.